Today we're talking all about signature sound as an artist. So how can you develop a very unique, creative, recognizable style in a very, very crowded music world, right? You know, the age-old question, how do I find my own lane? And as much as we all like to pretend that we're that guy who just doesn't care and creativity naturally flows out of us, that's obviously not the case, right? The truth is it takes hard years of practice, dedication to actually get your own voice out into Ableton, out into the world, and sort of package up this whole artist identity, right? The good news is I can guarantee that you're already doing a lot of the things that contribute towards this. So for example, have you ever gone on Splice? If you have, your brain is filtering through sometimes hundreds of sounds and picking maybe 5 to 10 that you like, right? Basically what I'm saying is we all need to just take a second and pat ourselves on the back, right? Every time you reach for that random compressor that you got for free on Black Friday and no one else uses it, and you really like how it sounds when you crush a piano, that's part of your signature sound now. You know, every time you load up a certain reverb and you really like how it sounds at 30% wet with a little bit of a, high frequency damping that maybe other people haven't thought of. Those small things in the long run will all add to your signature sound. So number one here is you're already doing it and keep going. And so diving into good old Ableton now, one very simple thing you can do early on is to choose your sonic calling cards. So sonic calling card being just something very basic, nothing revolutionary that you do in most of your tracks. So right here, we've got Of the Trees, in my opinion, one of the most unique creative artists out there right now. We have 4 tracks here, a couple new, couple old. And in these very short snippets of music, I can identify 4 calling cards for Of the Trees. So first we've got the yeah, the hype vocal yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Then we've got Sleeping Giant, we hear it again. Yeah. Right? So nothing crazy, right? He just grabbed the yeah vocal and he uses it in all of his tracks, or most of his tracks. Then we have the laser blip transition. So listening to the first 2 tracks we just listened to, but now listening for the laser blip. Yeah. Sleeping Giant. Yeah. Next up, we have a recurring pad patch that he uses in a lot of his tracks. So in Owl Song here, and then Delory. Sounds like he just modified it slightly, changed the key. And the great thing about that is it reduces the amount of brain power it takes him when he needs to reach for a pad during writing his tracks, right? He needs to create a little bit of tension, a little bit of a riser. He just adds a pad that opens up and, the filter opens up over time, right? So that's 3 sonic calling cards in, 12 seconds of music. And then I had one more here. Yes, of course, the bird calls, right? So the hype vocal, the yeah, the laser blip transitions, pad patch, and then of course we have a lot of bird calls in his tracks. So Owl Song, of course, it's all about the owl. And then I had over here another piece of the hieroglyph remix where there's a couple more bird calls. Right, very cool. You also hear a loon in a lot of his tracks. And long story short, less is more here, right? If you can choose your sonic calling cards early, then when you go to write a transition, you can reach for laser blips first, and then if they don't work, go to something else. The next thing you can do to start dialing in your signature sound is an interesting one, and it's something you want to do when you feel like you're stuck on a track. So you feel like you hit a wall, nothing's moving. This is the moment when you want to zoom in on a piece of your track with a microscope. And I can personally attest that I found some absolute gold by doing this. So top loops, for example. I often find that I kind of like it, but it feels like it's not really, sitting in the mix well. And what I realized is I can just use a shifter to kind of move it around and find something that sits better in the mix. And then also I'll often find like something in the high frequencies that sounds a little more unique and can be layered on other top perks and basically just sits better in the mix, right? So instead of this, I've now zoomed in with a microscope and found something that's slightly different that works better for my track. And this can apply to any element. So kicks, for example, I've also discovered things within kicks, kick loops. Let's say we get a kick in here and we have something like this, just a 4 on the floor. Maybe there's a little transition at the end like this. And let's listen. Right, so one thing I've discovered using this technique is that I like to play with the transients. So maybe this end one will be a little bit softer. Maybe the second one will be a little bit softer as well. And this gives you a slightly more organic feel to your loop. Right, so again, going in and sort of jostling your brain, thinking about the track from a new perspective can be very useful instead of just sitting out here saying,
"Hey, why's my track not working?"
Just try something different. And what do they say about insanity, right? It's just doing the same thing over and over and over. So don't be insane. And I didn't realize that there was going to be a nice little rhyme here, but brings me to my next point. Don't be insane, know your lane. Right? So if you have a dream, let's say, of playing at a music festival, you need to know who's going to be playing before you, who's going to be playing after you. Long story short, what is the energy level of the music that you're writing? So you should be able to give a 1 to 10 rating. If the energy level is a 10, then that informs a lot of the decisions that you're going to have to make. Unfortunately, there's a lot of rules in electronic music that are hard to break, but you get a little bit of leeway within your lane if you know your lane. So Of the Trees, for example, I've looked at a lot of his mix downs in the meters and compared them to someone like a Subtronics who would play after Of the Trees at a music festival. And you'll see that the low end of the Trees is intentionally a little bit below that of Subtronics, right? If there's only so much room in the box, Of the Trees says, you know what, I'll take a little bit of a hit on the low end so that my mids and highs have a little bit more shine, a little bit more presence, right? Basically what I'm saying is that as musicians, we have to realize that there's already so much great music and art out there. And there's people that have already figured out what works, right? So your signature sound doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists alongside other great music. And that's how people, new fans, people that like your music are going to connect to it. And so once you do know your lane, or another way to say it would be your intention, right? What's your intention behind your artist project as a whole, or even behind an individual track, right? And this brings us to, by far, the most important point of all. We don't need Ableton. We don't need anything technical. It's how do you find that magic flow state, right? Where it just feels like the music is writing itself, the thing we're all chasing as composers. How do we find that frequency? And I really think that each artist has their own unique method for this, right? For me, I know that when I'm on the keyboard and it feels like my fingers are no longer moving because I feel like my brain should move over here and I'm sort of just, again, it's just the music's writing itself. That's when I know that, a really, really nice melody or chord progression is about to come out. And, if you're writing, let's say ambient or meditative music, how can you expect to write a good track in that vein if you're not in a meditative state when writing the music, right? You're writing headbanging dubstep. How can you expect to write something in that vein if you're not sort of transporting your brain back to the experience of being in the crowd at a peak time set, right? And so this all comes down to having, some methods that you can put in place to make sure that basically just increase the probability that you're going to write a banger, right? Long story short, For me, I just know that there's morning Sam, there's afternoon Sam, there's nighttime Sam. First thing in the morning, it's got to be soothing, peaceful music. If it's midnight, I'm writing techno or something dark and evil, right? Very simple. I think a big part of it is really just going out and living your life, right? Go get your heart broken, come back, write some powerful music. The universe wants us to have unique experiences. The universe wants us to have tough experiences. The universe wants us to have incredible experiences. And all of that's going to translate into your signature sound, right? What is going to be your sole mission as an artist here on this planet, right? If you are anything like me, I don't think that we chose this craft by accident, right? I think that it's not an easy one, but it's a very rewarding one. I can't believe that it exists at all. The fact that you can just dive into a DAW and instantly be transported into this magical universe where all of your problems go away. It doesn't matter what happened during the day. And it's trippy, man. It's really trippy. And if you want help leveling up, not just technically, but on a soul level as well, I do have a very, very interesting coaching program that you might want to check out. And we can hop on a call. Let's chat. Anyways, I love you guys. I appreciate you watching my content. Drop me a like, drop me a subscribe, will you? And I'll see y'all at the next one. Peace.